Hello, everybody. Welcome to A Matter of Personal Taste, Tales from the Crypt Podcast. I am your co-host, Martin Fisher, and today I'm here with...
Andy Foreman, as always. Thank you, everyone, for returning.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know why I say today I'm here with. You're the only other person on this show, so you're the returning person. So
very, very true. But it's still early in the series.
yeah,
so we want to, there might be a few new listeners who haven't heard the earlier episodes.
I've got to take that into consideration.
And
wow, you guys picked one hell of an episode to start with.
Yes, I was going to say, if you haven't heard our other episodes, you might want to go back and listen to those, because this is kind of an obligation episode.
Yeah, today we're going to be talking about the episode Only Sin Deep, which is not the best, to put it lightly. It's fairly, what's the best term to describe it? Borderline not average, I would say.
Adequate.
It's adequate. They shot it. They did film it.
Yes.
It was done. Here's the thing. I don't like to be mean about movies or shows. I like to, be pretty positive about things, but occasionally you're going to come across something where you're just like, how did this happen?
Mm-hmm.
And this is that episode. And it's funny because it came off, the big three, the ones that started the whole series off and started with such a great bang. That's why we seriously recommend you guys to watch those 3 episodes, because they're really good.
Yes.
To follow it up with this kind of a thud. And then when we talk about, the next 2 episodes, it kind of sticks out even more.
Right. It's like nothing but bangers the entire first season. And then something that's like, not like, I wouldn't call it a thud, but just more of like an empty clap.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's, I guess we can talk about the plot a little bit just to give the audience some background for it.
Good news is that there is barely any of that. So let's get that started.
All right. I'll see you in 30 seconds.
Lea Thompson is a prostitute. She wants to be rich. She sells her soul basically to be young and beautiful forever. It doesn't work out. She starts aging. She tries to get her beauty or her life back, basically. It doesn't work out. The end. There you go. Hope you liked it.
Yeah, exactly. This is like, and I don't want to fault the creators of this episode too much, because I don't think there's much in the actual premise to work with.
Even in the actual, the story that it's based off of, it's based on a story from Haunt of Fear number 24, also called Only Sin Deep. And it is a similar thing where it's like the comic doesn't really have a lot to go with. It is kind of meandering for a while. Of course, the artwork as always is delightful. Especially like, the last couple shots of like her aging rapidly. Because that's the thing I should probably mention, is that she does age over the course of the episode or the comic. And she becomes like more grotesque as it goes along. And that's really neatly done. Mm-hmm. And that's something and what's funny is like, that's the best part about the comic. But in the actual episode, I don't think it translated that well, because I guess for whatever reason, this one time the makeup was kind of lacking.
Yeah, it's kind of just when you see the comic and you see what a grotesque visage, is that the right word?
Yeah.
that she is cursed with. In your mind's eye, you kind of picture almost like a Sam Raimi Evil Dead, like undead hag, like from Army, like remember the witch from like Army of Darkness?
Absolutely.
Like, you're picturing something like that, like, oh my god. But this, it's just like, it's Lea Thompson with like a bunch of wrinkles on her face.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like it kind of misses, like, because part of the point of her transformation is that, she's kind of becoming more hideous, not just old, but she's becoming like monstrous. And it's supposed to be like, oh, this is how she is on the inside. That's her inner beauty, basically, is that she's fucking hideous.
Right.
But then, in the actual episode, she just kind of like, they have some scarring on her, but outside of that, she just kind of looks like your granny. She looks like everybody's grandma.
Yeah, and I for one do not view the elderly as monstrous. so I can't relate to this episode.
Right.
I found it offensive and behind times.
We stand up for the elderly on this podcast.
Yes, exactly. No, it's like generic old lady makeup.
Yeah, it doesn't work. They needed to go a little bit, lean more on the monstrous part, just to enunciate that point a little bit more, because it just doesn't work. And it's kind of funny because like Lea Thompson herself in this episode, I think does a really good job for what she's given. I think she does a great job with her performance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably the best thing I could say, because her character is kind of annoying, and then nothing really goes along with her. She's not really given much to do in it. I mean, she's the lead character and not a lot happens to her, so not a lot goes on with her character arc, basically. She's kind of a stagnant character. She's always self-serving. And by the time she kind of comes around is, of course, when everything just falls apart and then her life is over, basically, by the end.
Well, the biggest missed opportunity for me is Lea Thompson is great,
yeah,
in everything she does. So wouldn't this be a great opportunity to do some really grotesque body horror?
Right.
Yeah, as opposed
absolutely.
to just her like covering herself in makeup and then putting a veil over it, and then like she pulls the veil back and people are just kind of shocked.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. I think that we've talked about this before. There are episodes where they stick really closely to the source material and it really pays off for them, and there are other times where they don't stick closely and it does pay off for them. And this is one of those cases where they stuck way too close to the source material and it didn't work because it doesn't translate as well.
Yes, and again, I don't want to fault the creators of the episode, only because again, I don't think that there's a whole lot there in the original story. And this gets back to a conversation we had on our interlude episode, which is that the strength of a lot of these EC tales comes not just from their creativity in terms of writing, but a lot of it comes from the art style with which they're brought to life. And this is not a criticism of the writing of EC at all, but like you read one EC story and you kind of get the beats for all of them. Like that's the comforting thing about it, is it's a similar type of storytelling.
Right.
But when you don't have the artist that necessarily brought it to life back in the 50s, when you don't have Jack Kamen or Jack Davis or Graham Ingalls or whoever, like it, sometimes the stories are a little lacking. You know?
I think that was definitely the case here. Like I said, like my favorite part when it comes to the artwork in the comic is, her aging. I think that came out really well. But then everything else, like the backgrounds are a little stagnant. All the other characters look like your standard 50s characters, basically.
Right.
It feels too, it doesn't have a lot of that what's the best way to put it? That style, I guess, that you expect from these kind of comics, from EC especially.
The plot doesn't really have a whole lot of forward momentum either, which I know is, some people would, I'm sure, defenders of it, and that sounds ridiculous
of this.
Well, that sounds ridiculous as I said it, because like who in the hell is like sitting in their house like worshiping this episode?
This is the one. This is the one.
Yeah, this is the crown jewel. Look, everyone is someone's favorite, and I'm sure somebody saw this when they were a little kid and it freaked them out, and that's why it's their favorite. But barring that, I'm sure a lot of defenders, hyperbolically, would say that the forward momentum is her trying to get her beauty back, but she's not a great person, so I don't really care if she gets her beauty back.
Right, yeah, because you don't like her to begin with. You're like, I don't care if she gets her life back at this point.
Yes, and a lot of other EC protagonists are very unlikable people, but I think they've had a lot more to chew on. Like, one of the things I'm thinking of, I don't remember the season, but everyone's going to know the one I'm talking about, which is where the escaped convict gets the dead cop's body handcuffed and he's stuck out in the desert. Now that character is like a bad person. He is awful, but there's a certain comic charm to it that you follow them along and you almost kind of root for them to succeed, even though you know that EC twist is coming. But with Lea Thompson's character in this one, it's pretty much just, oh, she's opportunistic and now she's losing the thing that allows her to be opportunistic. Okay.
Well, I mean, we already have an example even in just this season alone. I mean, William Sadler's character in episode 2, or episode 1, technically, our episode 2.
Right.
He is not a good person at all. He is a vigilante criminal, but he's so charming and it's because William Sadler is a great actor, but also because he's just given more to chew on with that character.
Right.
And it just leads to a better narrative because there is that kind of like, is he going to get captured or not? I don't know. With this one, it's just like, I don't really like this character. Lea Thompson does a great performance, but we're never kind of endeared to her at all.
Yes.
And that's what makes us not care. So
and the sort of over the top comic book horror elements that one goes to Tales from the Crypt for are much lessened in this one. So there's not even the frosting on it of grotesque horror, just sort of, you know, mildly aging makeup.
Yeah, and like you said before, I don't want to blame the creative team on this because they didn't exactly have a lot to work with. But I do think it is interesting to note Howard Deutch or Dutch, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Before he had done this, his big projects were Pretty in Pink and Some Kind of Wonderful. Very much not films you associate with Tales from the Crypt.
Right.
And I think that kind of played into how this first episode went. Because he came back in season 2 with Demi Moore and Jeffrey Tambor. I'm forgetting the name of the episode. It's literally the first episode of season 2. And I thought he did a much better job in that one. And I feel like this one was kind of like almost like a testing ground to find out what works and what doesn't work.
Right. And that's fine because we weren't there when they were making this season. Maybe they needed one that was just a lot lower budget.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It definitely gives that vibe of like, this one definitely had less money put into it compared to the other 5.
And maybe if they had more money put into it, they could really go all in on the body horror and really make up for the rather simplistic. And I know it's kind of hypocritical calling a Tales from the Crypt story out for being simplistic because they're all simplistic, but there's a certain cleverness to a lot of other Tales from the Crypt stories that I don't necessarily see as much in this one.
Listen, the William Sadler episode is great, and it barely adheres to what's in the comic. It takes the general premise and runs with it. Exactly.
And perhaps if they had deviated a little bit more from the source material, this one could be a little bit more exciting. But as it is right now, it just seems like a series of scenes meant to fill 22 minutes. And like there's a life lesson at the end of it.
Well, I think that is the best that we can leave off with on talking about this episode, outside of some trivia, of course. Which
let's hit us with the trivia.
Let's hit us with the trivia. Well, first off, let's kind of mention Lea Thompson. Of course, everybody knows her from Back to the Future, but let's do some genre stuff in there too. She was also, one of her first roles was in Jaws 3D, that classic. So.
Somehow the worst Jaws movie when Jaws the Revenge exists.
And then she also did Howard the Duck. So, outside of Back to the Future, her star was shining in the 80s.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of animal magnetism in the Howard the Duck. And anybody who's seen the movie knows that I'm directly referencing a line from that movie. So...
Okay, remember what I said at the start of this episode where I was like, I don't know why I introduced you because you're always here. I think I'm gonna have to change that now. After that reference.
One reference to Howard the Duck and you're kicked off of a podcast.
That's what does it, man. That's crossing the line.
I apologize.
And also there's a Brett Cullen who is the guy Lea Thompson tries to get with the rich guy. And I can't mention every piece of genre work he has done because my God, this dude is prolific. But a couple he's done, he did an episode of The Incredible Hulk. He did Freddy's Nightmares, Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And of course, with the movies, we're talking about comics, so we can bring it up. He did the first Ghost Rider. He was Nicolas Cage's dad.
He was.
Yeah. He did The Dark Knight Rises. And he did Joker, which is probably the most recent one he's done. So very prolific.
And it's the one he's probably had the most prominent role in too.
Yeah, definitely. All those other ones are kind of like outside of the TV show, but with the movie specifically, those roles are definitely truncated.
Yeah, but he's a great actor. I like him in this. It was HBO, or it is HBO. They get good actors to be in it. So
yeah, exactly. No, he's awesome. I wanted to at least mention him a little bit before we signed off on this one.
Right.
So I guess I'll wheel out the trivia now.
Sure.
So let me read this to the best of my ability. According to Lea Thompson, she found it difficult to perform her love scenes with Brett Cullen. Oh my, because he is her close friend in real life. Her difficulty was compounded by the fact that her husband, Howard Deutch, was directing her. So there you go.
If there had been an animatronic duck in the mix,
maybe would have been, yeah, I think that would have been more
Spiced up the
comfortable.
scene a little bit more.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
who am I to say?
Right. No, of course.
Yeah.
And then this is only a little funny one. Before the Crypt Keeper introduces this episode, he kind of recites like the mirror mirror chant that we're all kind of used to, and then he breaks a mirror, and that gets him 7 years bad luck. Ironically, the show lasted for 7 years.
Interesting.
Yeah, little funny thing.
Yeah.
The funny how the world works sometimes.
Yes, in the favor of Tales from the Crypt.
Right.
Yeah.
And there you go. There's
Yeah,
your
again,
trivia.
if this isn't the most exciting episode, it's only because it's not the most exciting episode we're talking about. So
right.
Yeah.
So there's Only Sin Deep. We have talked about it. I'm proud to say we've gone over this hill.
Yes, and there's no one I'd rather have gone over it with.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for carrying me over this one.
So that's more than okay.
I've been dreading this one so bad. I'm happy we're done with it.
Oh yeah, we got some fun ones coming up soon. So
Yes,
I hope everyone tunes back in for those.
I'm so ready to talk about the next two because they are so much fun.
Yes, and to be fair, we are recording this at like 9:00 at night when we normally record the episodes in the afternoon.
That is true.
So you're not getting us at our bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. So
that is very true. But I think we did our best with what we were given. So
just like the creators of this episode.
That's right. There you go. Bring it all together.
Yes, and thank you everyone for listening. And
I guess we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening, and feel free to go back and check out our previous episodes. I promise you they're more interesting because we talk about more interesting episodes. And check out our interlude with Jason Cretton of Horror Hound Radio. I've been Martin Fisher.
And I've been Andy Foreman.
We'll see you guys next time.
See you guys.